Tell us your name and what your role is.
Okay, so my name is Kelly and I'm the Operations Director at Blend Commerce.
And how long have you been at Blend?
I've been with Blend for just over 2.5 years.
So when you started Blend, what was your first role at Blend?
Ah, so my first role at Blend was I was a marketing assistant, which was probably everyone here was my boss. And I sort of had to write blogs, create copy, writing email flows in Klaviyo. So that's where I started.
And prior to Blend, what did you do?
Prior to Blend, I had my own businesses. So I had my own Shopify store. I also had a second business, which was a brick and mortar store. So the brick and mortar store was a wedding dress boutique where I hired out or sold wedding dresses. And then my Shopify store was a baby and toddler clothing brand. Everything was done online, and I sort of created the design of what we wanted for clothing. I then had sort of designs created that we would print onto the clothing, and I had no staff, so I literally ran everything. I obviously outsourced like my production team, my graphic design team, but everything else was done by me. I didn't have a customer service team. I was the customer service team. I was the person doing maintenance on the site. I had an IT guy that would jump in to help with things that were sort of beyond me. But it gave me a good sort of overview of, what it entails to own and run a Shopify store.
And what do you miss about having your own business?
I want to say nothing, but that's probably not entirely true. I think I very much have an entrepreneurial spirit. The great thing about that for me is I get to treat Blend like it's my own business, even though it's not. Possibly the converse of what you're asking me, what don't I miss? I worked really, really long hours. So there wasn't like an 8-hour workday for me. It was basically from as soon as you're up and dressed for the day until my kids were in bed. I would still be working when my children were in bed because there were things that needed to be done. I was running all the socials, I was replying to all the emails, I was packing all the orders. So if you're not going to do those things, clients are not going to get what they want from you, and you're not going to make any money at the end of the day. So it was a big responsibility. And I love now that I sort of have a much better work-life balance, I think, but I still get to explore that entrepreneurial side of me by looking after our clients and looking after Blend and doing everything that needs to get done.
What was when you had your own business, what was the area that you reached out for support on first? So was it like the development side, was it the marketing side? Like what was the area you had to first of all go and get an external person to help you with?
So I actually have a BCom marketing degree. So the marketing, I did explore sort of looking to have someone step in and help me with that. And I realized actually I know everything that I need to know, and I can sort of, not necessarily bash my way through it, but I had the tools to be able to do that. But very definitely it was sort of support with the Shopify store on the development front. There was no way that I was going to be able to do all these, things that were sort of out of the box.
What were the specific worries that you had as a kind of a brand owner about working with someone external? Like what were the things that were in your mind?
Well, you never know what you're going to get when you have a contractor sort of coming in to help you. I think the first sort of thing that I did was try and look for recommendations from people that I knew. So you've got sort of a level of trust. You've had someone that's had a good experience with them and you're like, great, maybe this is the person. But you still never know. You only sort of understand a bit more about how they work. Are they going to get the job done? Is it going to be done the way you want it to be done once you've started working with them? So I think that was probably the biggest thing.
Sort of taking that into today, though, obviously in your role now as operations director, what do you take from that experience now to help Blend clients feel more comfortable working with Blend?
I think the biggest thing is communication. I think our clients really need to know that there is someone on the other side of that Monday board that's, advocating for them, advocating for their work to get done, delivering the work on time. So I think communication is a very big part of that.
And would you say when it comes to, kind of the new clients coming in, what do you think is the thing that really pisses clients off when they first come in if it doesn't happen?
Yeah, I think lack of care. So making sure that they are feeling taken care of, that they are important. I try and treat all of our clients as our most important client. And one of the key things that I've carried with me, sort of wherever I go in my businesses, is always under promise and over deliver. As soon as you're doing that, you're going to keep your client happy. So be conservative with your timelines and deliver something that's great, that's on time, or, you know, even earlier than the time you've promised, but something that's really going to help them with their business.
When it kind of comes to the onboarding or discovery phase of kind of working with a client, what do you think are the main concerns that you hear from clients? Like, what do they really try and find out at that stage in your experience of working with blend clients?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think we have very different clients. You know, a lot of clients are sort of, not a lot, about half of them are quite into the detail and they want to feel that hand holding every step of the way, where others are a little bit hands off and they just like, these deliverables sound great, let me know when they're done. So I think it's just understanding the type of client that we're working with and understanding what level of care or what manner of working they prefer, because ultimately you want to work within their communication preferences. You don't want to bore someone who just needs the high level with a whole lot of detail, and the same for the converse as well.
What do you find most challenging working with the clients who need all the detail or the clients who are completely hands off? Like, is the one that is, obviously I guess both aren't ideal, but which one do you find the most difficult to work with?
It's an interesting question, because I think, you know, you don't necessarily want to say that you find clients difficult. The client is the client at the end of the day, and you want to help them as much as you can. You want them to feel like they're getting a good service, that they're happy with everything. You would think that maybe someone that needed a lot of detail would be a little bit more tricky, but I think just in the nature of what we do and the work that we do, we have the detail anyway, so it's not difficult to provide the client with that detail. It just takes a little bit longer. We do have clients that, well, we have had in the past clients that can be quite pedantic. They want to sort of oversee the task from beginning to end. They have multiple iterations. They're not willing for us to test something and then optimize. So I think our goal is, you know, especially from a strategy perspective, we've got a great strategy team. We do know what we're doing. So let us implement it. Let it go live. Let's see what the impact is, because we're never going to just set it and forget it. We're always going to be looking at how it's performing. What can we do now to optimize? So always an MVP approach.
What do you make of brands that are working with agencies that are more order takers, in the sense of, you know, each month, you know, a brand will go to them and say, look, we need X, Y, Z thing doing. What would you say to brands who are working that way at the moment, who are maybe thinking about going to an agency like Blend, where it is more led by the agency? How would you put their mind at ease?
Yeah, I think, you know, I can understand why brands might feel that they need an agency that's going to do order taking, as you say. They probably want a very high level of control, and they potentially feel like they know what's best for their brand. And I mean, it's not to say that they don't know what's best for their brand. They know the brand in and out. But potentially there's money left on the table because they're not exploring things that could be done that they've not even thought of. Where at Blend, we are sort of really strategizing about, well, how is the client going to see return on investment? How are they going to see improvements in customer lifetime value? Where if they were telling us what they needed to be done, for sure, we can go in and do that for them. But will it impact the customer lifetime value? What is the uplift in that task going to be?
What would you say, you know, in your experience, you've worked with lots of different brand owners, e-commerce directors, e-commerce managers. What would you say is the thing that scares them the most?
I think I'd have to say we've worked with people who I think feel a bit threatened by Blend. There are instances where the person that we are sort of asking for sign-off on things from the brand feels like we are treading on their toes and coming in to take their jobs. And I think it really is never the case. We don't want to be doing their jobs. We want to be supporting them. We want them to see real impact from the work that we're doing. And it's very much sort of a team approach. We generally come up with a priority list for clients based on the things that are going to have the most impact. but we're so open to communicating that with the person that, whether that's an e-com manager or whoever, communicating that with them. They may have internal things which tip the priorities on its head, and we're so open to that and adjusting priorities so that what they are working on internally is supported by what we are doing from our side as an agency.
We often hear a lot about agencies saying, we are this, we are that, they're trying to sell themselves to an agency. But it sounds like what you're saying is that this is now very much a two-way relationship. So if you are, if we have brands listening to you right now and kind of saying, look, if they want to work with Blend, what are the traits of a brand that you're looking for as the operations director of Blend that make them then to be a great client to work with and a client that we can ultimately get the most successful?
I think I would say top of my list would be to understand that we are there to support them. We're not there to take the limelight. We're not there to take the praise. All we want is the best for their brand. So ultimately, we are there to support them. And the communication goes both ways as well. If we are communicating with someone who doesn't have time to reply, is coming back sort of, weeks and weeks later, you're not really going to see the impact of what we're doing. We do need, when I say a quick turnaround, we don't expect people to reply, within 5 minutes or within the same day. But if there are things that we're sending over, if they could sort of prioritize to try and come back to us within a day, preferably within the same week, hopefully, they're going to see the impact of the things that we're doing very quickly.
So would you say you and your team are not scared of pushing brands and pushing clients to get things done?
Yeah, I would say we're not scared of pushing to get things done, but at the same time, we do it in the nicest way possible. We're not there cracking the whip and saying, hey, we need the sign off from you. It's more a case of, just by the way, this thing's quite important. We've got something else launching in a day or two's time, and we sort of A, need this information from you, or B, we need your approval to push this thing live. So just trying to make sure that we understand that they also have really busy days. They're not just sitting around waiting for a communication from Blend, but just sort of trying to help them balance the urgent priorities that we need to get over the line as well.
If there was one thing you could change generally about the relationship between agencies and clients, what would it be? So if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing, what would you do?
Oh, it's a tough question. I don't know if I have the answer. I think perhaps it's not something I would change, but I think it's more about finding a client that is the right fit. And that goes both ways. So clients looking for an agency need to also know if the agency is the right fit for them, the same way that we would need to determine if the client is the right fit for us. There's no point working against each other. If we're doing that, they're not going to see great results. We're getting frustrated because we know that there are all these things that we could be doing for them. So I think it goes both ways. Let's work out if it's the right fit.
So having been on both sides of the fence, both as a brand and also as an agency, if you had brands saying, look, what are the things which you find out about an agency before working with them, are there maybe a couple of things that you would suggest that they try and find out, or questions they would ask the agency to help them assess whether that agency is going to be good or not?
Yeah, I think, and maybe this isn't necessarily what the brands would be asking, but if the brands were telling the agency, these are the roles that we have within our company, this is what their responsibilities are, just so that we know who the best person is for that. And if they are doing something internally, we can sort of support those internal people and know where we slot in, because our role with brands is different from time to time. For example, if you've got a whole team of data analysts, we're not going to spend all our time analyzing your data. We can ask your data analysts for that data, and from that data make hypotheses and come up with strategies to sort of leverage that in their favor. So I think it's, it does go both ways. And I think brands potentially need to be open to the suggestions coming from an agency. And if they feel like they need to micromanage every task and have a very high level of control over everything that's happening, potentially it's not going to be a good fit for a CVO agency. I think maybe an order taking agency is then maybe what they should be looking at. But if they're really looking to grow their company, then let's dive into the strategies and see what we can do for you.
What's the nicest thing that a client's ever said to you?
Oh, I have had some really lovely clients. I had a client who sent us a message after their site went live, and this particular point of contact with the brand does everything. There is no task too big or small for her. I think she wears a lot of hats within the business. And you know the saying, give tasks to busy people if you want to get it done. She is that person through and through. And after their site went live, we had the most lovely message from them just thanking our team for all the support that we'd given to the client, because there were one or two things that she just couldn't get to, and she was like, I could really use some support on this. We were offering support every step of the way, and I think for me that was probably one of the nicest things to hear.
On the converse, what's the worst thing a client's ever said or behaviour that really pissed you off?
We have a really great team of experts at Blend. I think the caliber of employee here is really top notch, and we know our stuff. You know, I'm not saying I know my stuff, but we have a team of people that know their stuff. So if we're looking for a solution for a client, we're not necessarily just getting that solution from one team member. It's often a collaboration. And we've had clients in the past who sort of it was more in the order taking days, would want something done, and we'd come back and say, you know, although we can do this thing, we really don't recommend it. It's not best practice. It's going to affect your website. It's going to hurt your analytics. And they would come back and be like, well, we disagree with all these facts that you've given us. We want to go ahead and do it. And we would sort of, okay, we're going to give this one last shot. We really don't think you should be doing this thing. And they just insisted. And we were like, well, we've given you all the facts. If you're not going to take our advice, that's fine. We can do it. And it blew up. It was not great. Thankfully, I mean, you know, we were covered. We'd given the right advice. But people that don't want to listen to advice from an expert team, it's not going to work well. And it's probably not a good relationship, and probably not a good fit at the end of the day.
When we have clients that have multiple agencies that they're working with, does that always go wrong? Does it always go right? Or is it a bit of 50-50?
I've yet to see one go right, I think. It also depends what agencies you're talking about. I would say if you're sort of talking design and dev, no. They're going to be conflicts with pushing things live. I'm not a developer, but we sort of work in GitHub, and I'm sure other agencies work in GitHub or similar. And as soon as you're pushing things from two different teams, potentially you're missing merges from previous work that's gone live. It's not a good fit. I think if you're talking sort of acquisition agency or branding agency versus design and dev, probably very different. We've got a very strong email marketing team that works in Klaviyo. So, I mean, potentially we could work with a team that, you know, or a brand that wants to do their email marketing with a different agency, or, you know, do their email marketing in-house. That's totally fine, but there are potentially things that could be missed. There might be, I mean, we always push Klaviyo as far as we can. So there might be development things that we could pull into Klaviyo for special triggers. There's a whole lot more that I won't get into, but there are, you know, we can push the boundaries with that. So if the email marketing agency is working in a silo to the dev and design agency, potentially there are opportunities that are being missed there.
What's your take on brands that are trying to weigh up the difference between hiring an agency in to look after their e-commerce performance versus bringing in people into the business? Like, what have you seen would be maybe some of the challenges of those approaches?
So I understand why brands would prefer to bring someone in-house, and I'm talking sort of from the perspective of they've got no one doing email marketing and they're sort of deciding whether they should go agency or get someone in-house. For me, I think the downside of getting someone in-house is you don't necessarily know their level of skill. You can create flows and you can write content for flows, but there might be a lot that's being missed, especially if you're not an email marketing expert. So the quality of work that you might be getting from an in-house team could be under par. Like it's, yeah, we've found with our email marketing team, you know, we generally, someone doesn't have email, Klaviyo yet, we'd go in and set up their core flows. We'd then go and do sort of the special flows, subscription, loyalty flows. But then we're always looking to optimize. And the way we do that is a collaboration within our marketing team. It's not one person going in and saying, hey, what about this thing, and implementing it. It's very much sense checked. A strategist comes in to make sure that, you know, the recommendations are within what the brand is looking to achieve. So I think potentially there's a lot more bang for your buck with an agency. But that's not to say that you could, you know, get it set up maybe and then look at hiring someone internal, but just making sure that that person is not just a fly by night or, you know.
Cool. And last couple of questions. And so this one is about partnerships. There's been some criticism lately towards agencies that have a particular tech stack that they use. And obviously Blend has a tech stack where we tend to use a number of common apps. The one argument on one side is that, look, essentially agencies are just rolling out the same tech for each brand, and does that mean that everyone's site is the same? Versus the people might say, well, look, are you then specialising in each one? Do you think that it's right that agencies do specialise in a tech stack? Or do you think that it should be, is there an argument for being a bit more free with it?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand that with partnerships, we're getting a level of expertise from those partners, first and foremost. I mean, we're getting documentation, we're getting things that don't necessarily exist on the website that are free to anyone else. We're getting hand-holding from the partnerships where needed, we're getting technical support, we're getting accelerated support when needed. But that's not to say that we would push a tech stack onto a client. So although we have partnerships with an existing tech stack, we are always open to what the client has already and working with that tech stack. We would probably weigh up, if we had a recommendation for one of our apps or partners, it would be motivated by, you know, we want to do this thing, and unfortunately your app that you've got currently doesn't have that capability, or these are the limitations we're experiencing with this app. We have a recommendation for this app and these are the reasons for it. We're not going to go in and change a client's, you know, especially new client's tech stack based on our preferences. That's never the case. You know, we're always looking to do what's best for the client. So in some cases it is changing tech, but it's not going to be across the board, number one. And number two, it's only going to be where it's really needed because of capabilities.
Awesome.